Hey, fellow superhero cinephiles. Did you know that almost 30% of adults say they haven't read a book in the past year? The primary reason why is a lack of time. Well, Audible's here to help with the gift of found time. Thanks to Audible, you can listen to audiobooks like Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, or Slugfest, inside the epic 50-year battle between Marvel and DC. Read up on the history of superheroes in comics and movies with Grant Morrison's Super Gods. You can also check out Vanguard, my original superhero novel series, or try The Vril Agenda or The Adventures of Fortune McCall, both of which were written by our dearly departed host emeritus, Derek Ferguson. Whatever you're looking for, Audible has thousands of titles that you can consume while commuting, exercising, cooking, or just relaxing at home. And not only audiobooks, an Audible membership also gives you access to tons of content like podcasts, theatrical performances, and exclusive Audible originals that you won't find anywhere else. To give you a taste of what you can get, Audible has partnered with this show to provide listeners with a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod, and with your free trial, you get one free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. In fact, you get to keep those titles even if you cancel before the trial is over. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod and start your free trial today.
What was that back there?
They've obviously been sent to stop you from interfering.
Not that. The mask. The costume? Well?
It's a way to keep my lives separate. Safe.
It's more than that, Bruce. Those guys were scared shit.
Let's concentrate on the task at hand. We need to get to the sword before anyone else does.
So, we need Shiva.
We need Shiva.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine. Welcoming back another returning guest, and that is Stacy Dooks. Stacy, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back.
Good to have you back. I had a lot of fun when you were on last time. We talked about Red Sun. And then off the air when we were talking, you suggested that you wanted to come back on for today's pick, Batman: Soul of the Dragon, which at that point was not on HBO Max. I still don't think it is yet.
And
I don't
have it. So
yeah, because I remember this it was announced, I think, shortly before Derek passed away, and both me and him we talked about it briefly because we talked about the trailer. And Derek was a huge fan of all that kind of stuff. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And then it came out, and like I was checking HBO Max, I'm like, it's not here. What's going on? But
Very
when I
strange,
was but when I was back in the States, I hit up one of the things I like to do when I go back to the States is hit up the DVD recycle stores, and because they discount them so much now because of everybody's streaming everything now. You can
support physical media, kids.
I mean, it's great. Like I do the streaming too, but I love having the discs. I rip them onto my hard drive. I play them through my Plex app, and it's so good, so much easier to have everything organized like that. But I was at the store, and they had a bunch of different movies. Like you're talking like prices that are so good you feel like an idiot if you don't buy them.
Exactly.
And so one of them was I found Soul of the Dragon on Blu-ray for like $4 or $5. So just like, gotta pick that up. And
in a perfect universe, this would be like on a VHS with like either the clamshell like box and like the sticker would be faded, and it would like have that like that red R sticker on it or something like that. Because this is just, it's such of a piece of its time, and it sticks the landing for me in so many ways. So I can't wait to talk about it.
Well, not so much of its time, but of the time it's trying to replicate.
It's representing.
Evoking. Before we jump into that, why don't you remind people a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a writer. I've done some contributions to some various anthologies and whatnot. I've wrote some nonfiction for a little while for Looper.com before an amicable parting of the ways. And I am also a podcaster. I and my brother Ryan Every Wednesday, we do the Fanboy Power Hour, where we talk about various little bits of nerd culture, from comics to movies to TV. And so we're going to have a lot to talk about this week because of, a certain show on Disney Plus right now that is buck wild. So that'll be interesting to
I've
talk
got
about.
to catch up.
Mhm.
I've only watched the first episode so far.
Boy, oh boy, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
After this week, because we're doing for Black History Month, Kellen Conley's coming back on, so we can do a two-parter on Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I gotta rewatch
cool,
that this week. But then after all that's done, then I'm gonna go sit down and finally watch Book of Boba Fett.
I mean, between you, me, and the lamppost, you could probably skip to chapter 5 and just go from there. But that's just some friendly advice,
Okay. All right. And weren't you also doing stuff for CBR as well?
I'm doing some writing for CBR, but that's kind of petered out a little bit. I'm trying to get back into it, but we'll see how it goes. So, it's like everything, you want to make a plan, want to make God laugh, have a plan. So
yeah. We just had another CBR writer on recently to talk about Shang-Chi. So
Shang-Chi, very good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really fun conversation about that. So anyway, as we've mentioned, we're talking about Soul of the Dragon. And I kind of talked about how Derek and I were looking forward to covering this, and unfortunately didn't happen. So, and you kind of refreshed my memory about it when you mentioned Red Sun. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember wanting to see that. So let's talk a little bit about how you came to this movie.
Well, I mean, I'd seen the trailers for it and whatnot, and 70s era. As my brother Ryan says, one of the most perfect decades in comics for the distinguished for the competition of DC, which is Marvel, was the 1970s, where they were throwing everything at the wall, like trying to do supernatural comics, trying to do martial arts comics, trying to do everything. This was a very experimental time for the big two. And it's also one of my favorite eras because this is the era of Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers, which it was one of the power duos of Batman comics. I mean, if you haven't read any of their stuff, you really, really should, because it's gangbusters. So I was very intrigued by the idea of watching a 70s themed Batman movie, because for the most part, they've been playing it not necessarily safe, but they've been doing a lot of like the Elseworld stuff, like Red Sun, which we enjoyed, and Gotham by Gaslight, and The New Frontier, that sort of thing. And that's fun, but sometimes you just want to see them play with the settings a little bit and try some different things. And this definitely felt like they were trying something different. And then when I actually watched the movie and realized what they were actually doing, I was like, oh, this movie and I are very simpatico right now. Sam Liu and I are mind melding right now, and it's good. And the script by I think it's Jeremy Adams is the writer, really, really good too. Evokes the period and like from the opening sequence, which is a flat out James Bond riff. You know what you're in for. Like when he introduces himself as Richard Dragon, and they have the not necessarily Sean Connery or George Lazenby-esque guy at the beginning, where you're like, oh, now I see what you're doing. Oh yeah, you clever buggers. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the first things I noticed that was interesting is and I don't really know much about him in the comics. I know he exists, and Richard Dragon, and and I'd first been made aware of his presence maybe 10 years ago or something. I'm like, who's that guy?
He's one of those martial arts characters that debuted for a hot minute, I think, within the pages of Showcase or one of the anthology books, and he kind of became a background character after a while. He became a supporting character to I think he was in Denny O'Neill's Question series, because he'd largely been retired, but he helped train up Vic Sage a little bit. And of course in the comics he is very, very white, he's a white dude with a shock of red hair, and he's part of that underground 1970s martial artist scene. He doesn't really have any powers or anything per se. He's just one of those martial artists. He's a contemporary of characters I don't know necessarily. I think Lady Shiva debuted in the pages of his stories back in the day. But I think that they were very wise in this, and they were just like, what we're gonna do? We're doing this not necessarily. It says Batman on the cover, But this isn't really a Batman story. Batman is the sidekick of the real protagonist, which is Richard Dragon, as played by Bruce Lee. Because he's flat out Bruce Lee. The minute you see him, it's like, oh, it's Bruce Lee. And he's played by Mark Dacascos, who's done some great stuff. He was the Crow on the live action Crow series. Yeah. He is in Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is a jaw-droppingly good martial art.
He's also in he was the antagonist in a recurring villain in the new Hawaii Five-0 as well.
Yeah. He's real good. He's one of those actors where you're like, hey, it's that guy. And you're like, yeah, I like that guy. I like seeing that guy get work. And so, yeah, and he does a really great job playing the protagonist. We've got some folks here. We got Michael J. White playing Ben Turner, the Bronze Dragon.
Reprising his role because he also played it in the Arrowverse.
Yeah, he's done that too. And he's great in it. We got James Hong, mainstay of like this kind of like awesome cinema, like playing O Sensei. You got, Kelly Hu as Lady Shiva. Oh my God, Lady Shiva in this movie.
Playing another lady. First, we knew her as Lady Deathstrike.
Exactly. Yeah. So, when you need someone to play that badass, you call Kelly Hu.
Yeah.
Jamie Chung is Jade Nguyen, aka Cheshire, which that was fun. And we get Chris Cox as Rip Jagger, which I thought was pretty funny.
What's interesting is I misheard when O Sensei introduced him. I thought he said Rick. And his appearance and everything, and I thought it was Rick Flag, and I'm like, is that Rick Flag? And then she was making some noise, so I had to turn on the subtitles, and then it said Rip. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's Judo Master, which is funny because now they've got Judo Master over on Peacemaker right now.
I see. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, very different in Peacemaker.
Oh, very different in Peacemaker. Yeah. But Peacemaker is one of those shows where it's just like, oh, I see, you've gone insane. But that's all right. I respect you for going insane.
Yeah, I think I'm up to, I've watched the first 4 episodes of that. And just like every time the opening comes on and it's like the little skip intro button comes on, I'm like, nope, not skipping that.
Yeah, no. That intro is glorious. And the fact that they made Batmite canon in the Zack Snyderverse just makes
and Matter Eater Lad as well. And
Matter Eater Lad, of all the polls, that is buck wild that they would do Matter Eater Lad. Outrageous. I dig it.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Oh no.
She doesn't know if she wants to be up or down.
It's all good. All good. We are all indecisive in that way.
You said something that I wanted to touch on too, and that's the fact that it's not really a Batman movie because we're watching the movie and it's like you see Batman briefly in that first fight, and then I'm watching this movie and I'm just having fun. I'm looking at my watch, I'm like, man, Batman hasn't turned up in a long time, and then he doesn't show up again until basically the end. So he's only in the movie for like maybe 15-20 minutes tops,
if that. Like he's very much a supporting player in the movie. It's really more Bruce's story, if you think about it. Like he'll break out the costume, which is a great costume. Like it looks so Jim Aparo, Marshall Rogers, it's nuts. Like the first time I saw it, I audibly just went, yeah, all right. And so, but he breaks it out, and Richard notices that when he's in the costume, he fights better. Like he fights harder than he would as Bruce. And it's really interesting. And of course, we have the great references like Silver St. Cloud is in the first. Like that was the first time I was like, oh, they get it. They get
also
it.
Like the penthouse thing. That was from Denny O'Neill's.
It wasn't quite the Wayne Tower with like that huge tree in the middle with like the abandoned subway station back cave, but it was pretty close. And I'm like very evocative of the mood. And I'm like, yeah. And the computers with the big reels of tape. I'm like, yes.
And the bell bottoms too.
Bell bottoms and seeing like 70s hair, 70s hair. Bruce Wayne is just great with the pop collar. I loved it. I was just marinating.
And that's one of the things I liked about it is the fact that they told you what the time period was without coming out and telling.
Without actually doing like a year, like Gotham City, blah blah, 1970X. Right. Like they just let you make your own conclusions and just put it in your own mental time.
Right from the beginning. As soon as you see like the hairstyles and the fashion, you're like, oh, okay, I know what they're doing. I get it.
And a huge shout out to Joaquin Horsley, who does the soundtrack, who does the music and the score, because he's breaking out those waka 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 sounds and like all this kind of stuff. Like, and the opening sequence where like Richard makes his James Bond escape and gets the like parachute going, and like the trombones are just wah wah wah. Like, I'm just like, yes, you understood the assignment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the opening credits too, like, you know, the Bond-esque opening credits.
Everybody perfect. Like the poses, the silhouettes and stuff, like very, very cool. Very cool. Like the Bruce Timm style of animation lends itself very well to that kind of opening montage, which I appreciated. And they did actual opening credits like those movies would back in the day, where they led with starring this person and that person. Yeah. And I appreciated that very much. So.
Something else, and you know, about the whole thing about Batman being a sidekick. At first, I was kind of disappointed with when I got to the end of the movie. I'm like, why did they really call this a Batman movie? But then I realized it later, because they did the same thing in Enter the Dragon, right? Because John Saxon was really like top billing. He was like he was like the top star. But really, it was a Bruce Lee vehicle. It was a Bruce Lee was the star of that movie, and John Saxon was really the sidekick. And they kind of do a similar thing here, where Batman's the top billing, and then you watch it and like, oh no, it's actually Richard Dragon's movie.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they play that very, very well. Like, they understand that, you know, Batman has to be on the label because that's the cheap draw for a lot of people, because, you know, Batman is the de facto flagship character of the entire company. There was another guy, Superb. It'll come to me.
I don't think he's that important if you can't remember him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. He's some guy, seemed well, wore a lot of red. But yeah, he's kind of become the de facto character. So I understand why they put him on the title hand. But they make judicious use of Batman. Like, they play with him and just have him like. There's that great bit where they like meet Shiva and he's just like, and Richard Dragon looks at Bruce, is just like, you didn't put on your Halloween mask and try to stop her? And he's like, I was working up to it.
I love that. The fact that even Batman's scared of Lady Shiva.
Even Batman was like, look, I'm the Intercontinental Champion. She's the world champion. I gotta eat my Wheaties for a few more years before I'm ready for Shiva. Yeah. And Kelly Hu just plays her magnificently. It's just like, she's so past it. Like, nothing really phases her. It's great. Yeah.
And she's reprising it because she also played Shiva in Arkham Origins too, the video game.
Oh yeah. She's played the character before and really made it her own, and kind of and especially with the way that she's billed as O Sensei's top student, and like she's a force of nature. Like Lady Shiva doesn't sleep; she holds back. That's what she does.
Oh, and something else interesting here is that Jade is actually Cheshire. I didn't put those together. And Kelly Hu voiced Cheshire in Young Justice.
Absolutely, yeah. And Cheshire would play a role in New Teen Titans, especially if you know your lore with Speedy and their relationship. And then they had their daughter together, so that's pretty wild, yeah. And so seeing her there, yeah.
And Kelly Hu was also China White too in Arrow, so another Arrowverse alum. But also another Arrowverse connection. This David, I think I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, but Gwyn Tolley. He's the voice of Batman, but he's married to Elizabeth Tulloch in real life.
Oh yeah. And he's been in like Grimm and stuff like that, so he's no stranger to genre TV, and he does a really good job with Batman. I find that he's got that nice mix of like, he's not quite like what's the name of the gentleman who plays? He's got that quality. He's got that quality of the Batman actor in Under the Red Hood, Bruce Greenwood. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of that gravitas to him, but mixed with kind of like because he's playing Bruce Wayne as kind of this young playboy, and like, you know, talking to Richard like, I don't really do that stuff anymore. Richard's like, oh yeah, and then takes the ice pick and just throws it at him. So he's got that nice kind of like, just a little bit like reserved, kind of guarded, still trying to play the playboy role, but when he breaks out Batman, it's all business. Like, it's great. So I like his stuff.
Yeah,
would see more. Yeah.
And it's so evocative of the 70s. And one of the things this movie does is is something Derek always talked about, and I had Derek front of mind the entire time I'm watching this.
Oh, definitely. I was like, if only.
He would have eaten this up with a spoon and gone back for seconds.
Yeah.
But one of the things I remember him saying is that, you know, you can do anything with Batman, and like Batman's such a versatile character in that way. And that's what I really love about this, the fact they just swung for the fences and like, yeah, we're gonna put Batman in a 70s spy / kung fu thriller, and you're gonna love it.
And it works.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it works. It works.
Absolutely. He's one of the most malleable characters there. That's why Elseworlds with Batman, R.I.P. to the late, great Brian Augustyn, who gave us the first and greatest Elseworlds, Batman Gotham by Gaslight, and its sequel, Master of the World, Master of the Future. And yeah, so it's one of those things where you can make him a Green Lantern. You can make him Superman. You can make him most anything, as long as you stay true to the core tenet of Batman. The through line is just his sheer cussedness, and they bring that up like throughout the movie. Like, Bruce is not necessarily O-sensei's most gifted student, but he is the most determined student. Like the test with the stone, everybody else gives up, Bruce is still there trying to break that rock, even after O-sensei tells him that's like, you kind of misunderstood it. I told you just to try, and then Bruce still keeps going at it. Yeah, and what I love about it is it's a gigantic rebuttal F/FU to those who like try to deconstruct Batman, because O-sensei says, like, look, you're never going to defeat. You swore a vow to like war on crime. Crime is something that you can't beat. Even if you like shatter it, there will be pebbles. If you break the pebbles, there will be sand. Evil will still be there. You can't win. And like Bruce just takes that all in. When O-sensei leaves, starts hitting the rock again, because he's not going to stop, because he's Batman. And when Ben Turner beats the ever-loving Jesus out of him, he will still not give up, even though he is mostly just mulch at that point. Like, he like still gets up and is just like, let's go. I didn't hear a bell. Just like that's the thing about Batman. Batman absolutely, positively will not give up. He will keep doing this until he is dead. Funnily enough, might tie into the ending, but we'll stick a pin in that and get back to it.
But also, the demon makes reference to that too when he said, when he talks about the fact that, you know, he's like, you're a child dressing up in a mask and all this kind of stuff. And Batman's just like, I don't give a shit what you think.
Whatever. The mask is my face. Like, he's just like, doesn't matter to me. I'm still gonna do it. You can't stop me. That's what I love about Batman. He just raises a gigantic middle finger to nihilists everywhere. Like, I know I can't beat crime, but I'm not out there for that. Everybody misunderstands it. Like, as much as I love Kevin Conroy and Batman the Animated Series, you know, I am vengeance, I am the knight. Batman's about vengeance. Batman is about protecting. He's about trying to be the hero who sweeps in and saves the family who is in danger. Like, that's Bruce's fantasy. He walked out of the Mask of Zorro. His parents got murdered in front of him, and he was like, well, where was Zorro? Where was the hero? And he's like, well, I'll be that guy, and I will do that. Like Batman's story begins in an alley, it ends in an alley, because Batman will die trying to save someone. That's his epitaph. Like, he'll do it. Like, because he's just that guy. He's all about protecting people. Batman is out there to make sure that nobody dies. It's like everybody talking about what a brooding loner he is. He's got 50 kids. like he's the biggest softie in the DC universe. And everybody's just like, oh, he's so brooding and intense. It's like, no, he's the biggest softie in the world. He just can't say the words, because if he says those 3 words, he feels that he will doom people to the fate of his parents. That's why he always keeps it under a bushel.
Great analysis.
But back to the movie. No, thank you. but that's who he is. He is a justice engine. He will never stop.
And I loved Michael Jai White's performance in here. He's just like
he's so good.
The design of Bronze Tiger in this, and just like everything. It was just it's total evocation of Jim Kelly. I loved it.
Absolutely. Like, it's very Jim Kelly. It's very Luke Cage in the
even with like when
with the shirt,
the yellow shirt and everything. I was like, is he doing a Luke Cage riff now?
I see what you're doing, design team, and I'm not saying no. And I love the character progression that he gives to Michael J. White gives to the character Ben Turner, because when we meet him in the flashbacks, he's very angry and like he's still working on his anger. Oh, Sensei even mentions that when he destroys the training dummy. He's still working on his anger. And so we see him in the present and he's talking to the kid and giving him the pep talk and the speech. That was really sweet and touching. Like, hell yeah, you're ready. Go in there, Tiger. Go in there and get him, champ. And the kid just runs in there like he's got like, yeah, man. And so he's great. And when the other guys show up, he's like, guess you're not here to enroll, huh? So, but we also find out that he had to do some pretty heavy stuff back in the day, like when he's tracking down the leaders of the Cobra cult, and he realizes, oh, dip, I have to kill this kid, and that's the line that he can't cross. Like he knows the objective thing would be to take this kid out, but he can't bring himself to do it because he's not that guy. Like, you know, he's a hard man, but he's not a mean one. And he can't bring himself to do it. And that's why Bronze Tiger is awesome. Anybody out there that might be confused.
I mean, like, you know, stuff like this, it makes me wish that Michael J. White got more prominent work, because he's a lot better than he gets credit for.
He's so good, and he's such a fan of the material. His love of the material like springs off the board. Like he's clearly in love, especially, you know, not just with, you know, superheroes and comics, but he's clearly a fan of the era. Like if you've seen
Black Dynamite, yes.
Good God. Either in the movie version or the animated series, like he has so much fun with it. It's clear his affection for it. He wears his love of it on his sleeve. And it's just a shame that, you know, he deserves that shot. Like, don't get me wrong, I did like Idris Elba in the Suicide Squad, but I'm like, man, if only we could have gotten like Michael J. White as Bronze Tiger in live action. That shit would be on the big screen. I mean, I know he's been Bronze Tiger on the small screen, and I'm not denigrating his work on Arrow, but man, could you imagine? Like,
oh God, that would be amazing.
Just to bring him in and have him just be the badass. Like,
well, I mean, for years, my dream casting would have been him as Luke Cage.
Yes. Yeah. In another universe, like I'm not denigrating the
oh no, Mike Coulter is like now that we've gotten Mike Coulter, like you got to bring back Mike Coulter.
But if we were to do like Into the Cage verse, like holy moly, like if you had modern Cage and then 70s Cage played by Michael J. White, that would be ridiculous. That would be amazing, because they would both bring it. So yeah, and Michael Coulter's amazing. I love Cage. Yeah.
Back in the day, I described it as my ideal comic book adaptation would be, you know, Heroes for Hire, set in the 70s. You got Michael J. White as Luke Cage, and you got Ray Park as Iron Fist.
Ooh, that would be good.
You have it directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Ooh.
That would have been my dream project back in like the early 2000s.
Yeah, that'd be great. If we had all that FU money and could just make a project, we could pitch a project. Like, look, Disney, I know you're not going to want this, but you're looking at it with your head, not your heart. Please understand. This will make a lot of money. This will make a lot of money. Is what I'm saying. Yeah. Trust me, that would be amazing. Yeah, and this movie's pretty great too. I mean, like we haven't talked about Richard Dragon that much, but Richard Dragon's story in this movie is really good. Like they set him up as like, you know, he's this secret agent. He's working for the government. But by that same token, when he realizes that the Cobra cult is after the gate, he's like, look, my employers, when we try to militarize this, you're the only person I trust, Bruce. So we got to work together and try and stop this from happening. We owe it to O Sensei. So yeah. So when
I love that the whole thing is like, it's basically, you know, if Bruce Lee's character from Enter the Dragon had a franchise and
And was its own like little universe. Yeah. And in that universe, there's a Batman.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible. Yeah. Like, and wouldn't be all that out of place now that I think of it. Like,
no, I mean,
given Enter the Dragon, like it would only make sense that there'd be a dude dressed as a bat showing up in there somewhere. And I wouldn't bat an eye. I'd be like, yep, that's obviously, that fits.
Which is, because it's funny when I think about this, and when I was watching the trailer, I was like, wow, that looks interesting. I'm like, I'm not sure how they're going to make that work, but it did. They did make it work, and it worked together far better than I expected it to.
Yeah, because they decided, like, they made the very smart choice of like, okay, of all the incarnations of Batman that we can go with, let's go with the Denny O'Neil globetrotting adventurer James Bond. Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams version.
As
And
Morrison
that actually
calls him,
works
the
really
hairy-chested love god.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like like John Pertwee Doctor Who is Kung Fu Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely, yeah. And it all works together really well. And it's ultimately also a story of family, because like when O Sensei sacrifices himself to close the gate and stop, Snake Cthulhu from taking over the world, he's like, remember that the four of you are stronger together than apart. And so like it's essentially this estranged family of misfits getting back together, which I appreciated because again, Bruce is a big softy and loves his family, whatever family that happens to be. And I can't help but feel in my head canon that one of the reasons he didn't go after Shiva was because, she's like his sister. He doesn't want to go and fight her. Yeah. Plus he knows he'll lose because she's Shiva, for God's sake. Yeah. So it's great. And the dynamic of the four characters is great. And when Richard has his confrontation with O Sensei, in quotation marks, who's actually the demon, it's pretty cool because he gets to he goes like full Super Saiyan and gets like his dragon avatar, and it's very Big Trouble in Little China, which again I appreciated. And we even got some other characters that I didn't expect to see, like from the Tim Drake Robin miniseries. We got King Snake.
Yeah,
where I was like, holy shit, King Snake! Like I didn't expect to see him in here. Like he's a great character, and he just kind of he fell along the wayside somewhere because. He didn't make it out of the first Robin series, I don't think. Oh yeah, he got out of it, but he was traumatized. But that's some deep cuts and ones that I very much appreciate.
Oh yeah, I mean the Cobra Cult and all that. That's very deep cuts. Yeah.
Although I didn't see Destro or the Baroness, so I was like, I'm confused. every time they bring up Cobra in DC, I'm always like, really? Like, really?
It's spelled, Stacy. It's spelled with a K. It's completely different.
Legally distinct. Hasbro, please don't sue. This is our own thing. And they have used it previously to good effect, especially in Batman Beyond. They had a fun arc with Cobra in Batman Beyond, and that was pretty cool. So seeing them is always fun because they're delightfully creepy. And the guy who plays the head of the Cobra cult, Cobra himself, is delightful. He is a praying mantis of a human being. It's in this thing where it's like, dance for me, and I'm like, ooh, you're creepy. I don't like you. I want someone to hit you right now. So yeah. And it turns out he's the kid that Ben Turner couldn't bring himself to kill. So it's just like, oh boy.
Yeah. Josh Keaton did the voice of that. He was
yes,
from Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah, Josh is real good at playing creepy. He also plays Electro in the Spider-Man game.
Oh,
so
okay.
If you've ever played Spider-Man for PS4, it's literally Spider-Man squaring off against Spider-Man. So it's pretty fun. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't know he also did voice of Steve in What If, Captain America.
Yeah. He did a really good impression of Chris Evans.
Yeah.
Like it was spooky. Like when he was talking, I was like, did they get him? And then I had to check the credits and be like, oh no, but good homework, Josh Keaton.
Yeah.
Good catch. Yeah. Like if they ever need like him to voice Cap in like an animated thing, like, all right, we know we can get Josh Keaton on speed dial. Yeah.
And want to talk some more about Mark Dacascos, because talking about guys who don't get their due, like he's definitely one.
Really, without a doubt.
I gotta, the Crow's TV show, Stairway to Heaven. Not a great show.
It's solid. It's solid.
You know what the problem is? It had a very rocky first half. If you can make it through like the first half of the season, the second half of the season is really solid.
Once they find out what they're doing and decide to try to stand on their own rather than cleaving too closely to the movie, because the shadow of Brandon Lee hangs heavy over that franchise.
Yeah.
Once they found their footing and started doing their own thing, they really kind of started to move forward and get some momentum going.
Yeah. And it got cut off right when it was getting really interesting.
Yeah, it was one of those shows that just didn't get its due.
Yeah. I mean, that was Bryce Zabel. He had that happen a lot, because Dark Skies was another one. It was this really underrated, like, X-Files-esque show, but it was set in the 60s, and he had this whole like 5-year plan for like each season would be set in like a different decade. And
I think I remember that one. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was one of those like, well, we've got the X-Files, so why do we need you?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was like that one show that I quite liked about the website. the paranormal website with the brother who went missing. The founding brother went missing, and the other guy was a little more glitz and sleaze, came on to take over. Freaky Links, it was called.
Okay, I think I've
Freaky
heard of
Links.
that, but I don't think I ever saw that.
And it was interesting. It was interesting where they tried to play with the website, like they had an actual website online that you could visit and watch like video archive footage to try to piece together the mystery of what happened to the missing brother. So that was kind of cool. It was one of those things where it was like a almost like a modern day successor to like the old Captain Power show, where like there was an interactive element to it, which I quite appreciated. But yeah, it was one of those shows where it's just like, it's an interesting idea, but we weren't ready for it yet.
Yeah,
we weren't quite ready for it,
especially with The Crow, because it actually had the solid ratings to get a new season, but then they had like a change in ownership or something like that, and
something went down.
And because especially because he outclassed pretty much everybody on that show acting wise, except for Mark Gomes, the guy who played Albrecht. He was the only one who was like, they were both like at a different level from everybody else in the show.
Oh yeah. They were definitely up there.
And I followed him here and there. Like he was he plays great villains, right? He does like in was it Cradle to the Grave with that awesome fight scene with him and Jet Li in a ring of fire. And which was unfortunately edited together in a crappy way because they spliced in all the fights with the other people. It's like, no, everybody just came for this fight. That's it.
We just want to see this. Please, thank you. I don't want anything else. Just give me the thing that I want. But and he's great even in this through an animated format as a leading man. He's fantastic because he's got this dry, sardonic sense of humor. And when he's playing the younger Richard Dragon, he's much more earnest. And very clearly admires and loves O-Sensei as a father figure. Like when O-Sensei goes through the door, he's like, "We've got to get him back." And Bruce is like, "No, he's gone, man. We got to let him go. Whatever's on the other side of that door got him." Which is why it's so heartbreaking when the door opens and he has to fight this corrupted avatar of his mentor. And it's clear that it's tearing him up inside, but he still has to do it. Like that's a great moment. And Batman is nowhere to be seen. And that's like, and you at that point you don't care because you're so invested in the Richard Dragon story where I'm like, oh my God, what's he gonna do? And like the demon wants to take Richard and make him his avatar, and like, holy shit. like at that point you're like, Bat who? Like what's going on? Yeah.
And he does some he does a great job with voice work because people think about Dacascos and they just think, oh well, he's just a guy who's a really good, he looks really good fighting on screen. But no, he does a pretty good job at the voice work too. First time I experienced that was he did the audiobook for Battle Royale, and he did a really good job with that. So it's nice to see him doing some more voice work like this.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's been in a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's like from like Brotherhood of the Wolf to John Wick 3. Like he's a guy that you put him in anything. That's
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was in Mortal Kombat Legacy. He played Kung Lao.
Absolutely, yeah. And he's one of those actors when I see him, I'm like, okay, I know I'm in good hands. It's the same way as when I see like Michael Biehn crops up on The Mandalorian. I'm like, oh, well, there we go. I know he's going to give me exactly what I need for this episode because we're in good hands. He'll know the assignment and he'll stick to it. And he's one of those actors I always like see getting work.
And it looks like he's going to be in the sequel to 47 Ronin, the Keanu Reeves one. Yeah.
Oh wow, it's getting a sequel.
Yeah. It's going to be like it's going to be set kind of. It's going to be set in the future.
Oh wow.
So it's going to be like a cyberpunk sequel to it. So
I mean, look, sure. I'm glad you're having fun with it, but that Stan Sakai 47 Ronin is just right there waiting to be adapted into an animated movie, and I'm just like, come on. you like, this is good, could be great though.
Yeah, but we've also got so many different adaptations of 47 Ronin. So I read,
it's tough.
Yeah, and I did I watched the fantasy version that Keanu Reeves did, and I'm like, this is a
Mhm.
lot better than people give it credit for.
Oh, all right, all right. I never watched it, but
I think a lot of people unfairly judged it.
I maybe I should be, I in Keanu I trust. Like
Yeah.
I will give it a fair hearing. So
It was a
I
fun
will
watch.
add it. I'll add it to the queue.
Yeah, it was a fun watch. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, the sequel to 47, okay, because everybody dies at the end. But and then they're like, oh, and it's going to be a cyberpunk sequel set in the future. I'm like, okay, I'm in now. I'm in.
Okay. I mean, not saying no. I mean, there's always an interesting way of turning things around. And let's be honest, I mean, new movies with maybe a fresh take on some old material might not necessarily be a bad thing, is all I'm saying. I love superhero movies as much as the next guy, but it'd be nice to see some different things out there, besides these tent poles. I mean, don't get me wrong. love me a Spider-Man No Way Home, but there was a time when these movies were a little more spaced out. Thankfully, they're getting that way again, thankfully, but there was a time when it was just like, oh, it's just Marvel and it's just Marvel movies and Star Wars movies, as far as the eye can see.
I mean, you know what? I'm not complaining.
Oh, no. Like,
as a kid, I wanted this, and now I'm getting it. So I'm totally on board for it all.
Oh, like, don't get me wrong. Like, please don't throw me, into this briar patch. But it's like, it's crazy that it's just everything's a tentpole now. Like, we don't find those quirky hidden gem movies like an Inner Space or a Three Amigos anymore. They're harder to come by. They're mostly just confined to streaming.
I think that's one of the good things about streaming is that we have all these options now for.
I mean, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of it's like die-cast metal construction. Like a good kind of indie movie you find in the theater is a bit of a lost art. But
yeah.
I like this movie where we get a fun action movie that knows exactly what it is, understands the assignment, keeps it lean and mean in under 90 minutes. And has the balls to give us like a Wild Bunch ending.
Yeah.
That was the bit where I was like, oh, I see what this is now. You mad geniuses.
It made me wonder if maybe we might get a sequel to this.
I mean, it is a pretty Butch and Sundance running into the gunfire, and then everything fades to white. So who knows? Like, I would almost want to keep it just as this weird thing on its own.
Yeah.
But I mean, a sequel could be fun, but I don't know. Or here, you do a sequel and you just don't explain what happened.
Yeah.
Like, you don't tell, how did you get out of there? And Batman just says, wasn't easy, or something like that. And just like,
well, too, I think that because this is such a love letter to Denny O'Neil, like, there's so many more Denny O'Neil stuff that you could bring in a sequel.
Oh, without a doubt.
So yeah, I think this is what I love about this is it's
oh my God,
full on Denny O'Neil Batman, and I love it. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Frank Miller's work on Batman, but most of his work on Batman.
well, you know what you do. You know what you do in the next one. You know what you do. You don't necessarily make it a direct sequel, but take something from that era that is universally beloved and do it. And do it. And for those who don't see what I'm holding up the Walt Simonson, Archie Goodwin Manhunter series.
I never read that, so you have to explain for me and everybody else who.
Okay, so the Manhunter series was essentially like Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson did this backup in Detective Comics featuring the 1940s Manhunter character, but they updated him to into the modern world of the 70s, and they made him like a globe-trotting adventurer, assassin. He's working for this secretive organization that's trying to supposedly better the world, and they've not only created this organization and as his support network, but they've also cloned Paul Kirk, the Manhunter, and made a bunch of clones of him as their army. And he's ostensibly going to help them save the world. But hey, surprise twist, the organization turns out to be evil, and Paul has to go rogue with some friends of his. And then eventually he runs into Batman. And so in the final story of it, Batman and Manhunter team up. And at the end of it, well, Manhunter doesn't make it out. So it's great. That would be very much of a piece with Soul of the Dragon. I think that would make for a great spiritual sequel / adaptation of it, like Batman Manhunter. That would be bonkers good. So if you haven't read the comic, everybody, Run Do Not Walk. It is so good.
I'm just looking it up on
Yeah.
Comixology right now.
Yeah. It is, it's early Simonson, so he's not quite as polished as he is later on in his career, but it is really, really quite good as like a globe-trotting adventure story set in the 70s that eschews a lot of the superhero stuff and plays more into like martial arts, spy, conspiracy stuff. Very, very kind of like 3 Days of the Condor.
Okay.
Feeling, to it. Very conspiracy kind of thing, but very fun. And eventually, like Kurt Busiek would revisit it years later in his comic, The Power Company, where he would have a character named Manhunter who was one of the clones that survived.
Okay.
And was just like, he called himself Kirk DePaul. And was very much like a mercenary. Like, I don't care that I was a clone of this guy. I'm just trying to handle my business. I'm a ruthless mercenary. But every so often he would do something that was very characteristic of his template. And you're like, are you as evil as you think you are, dude? So yeah, very fun, very fun.
That seems like, HBO Max, maybe you should make a adaptation of this, because this sounds pretty good.
Man, like it is one of those unsung series that, like, if you know, and it's so fun. And the fact that nobody has thought to do anything with this.
I mean, and this seems, especially if you do something like this in the 70s, I think that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Set in period, it would be very, very good. And that Walt Simonson Manhunter costume, where he's got the guitar, the punching dagger, like, oh, it's so good. And he's got the broom handle Mauser. Oh, that design is just so good. Like, in reality, adapted, it might look a little goofy, but on the page, it looks so good.
I mean, they made Peacemaker's costume work.
They made Peacemaker's costume work, so all bets are off.
Yeah.
Batgirl of Burnside looks amazing now. She looks exactly like her comic book counterpart. I'm like, what an age we live in where comic costumes are starting to look like the comics, and I'm just like, yeah,
and they're finding ways to make them work. I think that's because some of them would not have worked in live action, but I really love how they managed to make costumes that I thought would never work actually look pretty good.
Actually work, yeah. You don't have to make the Green Lantern costume CG. I know we will have made it when I see Guy Gardner's costume in live action with those giant green moon boots. I will know that we have arrived. All feuds are over, all hatchets buried when I see that outfit.
Well, isn't he going to be the one of the lead characters in Green Lantern Corps? So you may see that.
I don't know. I haven't heard boo about that show. The only thing I know is that it's coming. Like, whatever it turns out to be, like, they've already been playing like footsie with Green Lantern as a concept over in the Arrowverse.
Right, yeah.
If you've been watching Batwoman, Diggle has this box that
I haven't watched. I'm so behind on Batwoman. I watched like a few episodes of the first season. But
I
do remember at the end of the last episode of Arrow, like he'd found the box. And
he found the box, and it's pretty clear that there's a ring in there.
Yeah. But when he appeared on Superman and Lois, there was no mention of that. And I'm just like, is there going to be something about the ring here? But no, nothing.
They've been playing footsie with it. Like, he had an opportunity, like he mentions in The Flash, that he had an opportunity to become a hero.
Okay.
And he kind of deferred it because he's got his wife and family. And so he's still on the fence about it. Although they have also, like in Crisis on Infinite Earths, when Flash 91 meets up with Diggle, he's like, John, like, where's your ring? It's just like, he's John Stewart of that other Earth. Yeah. So, oh man, that's so good, because Green Lantern's one of my favorite, not necessarily characters, but concepts. There are a lot of characters under that Green Lantern umbrella that I quite like. Like, everybody from Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz to, John Stewart and Guy Gardner. I absolutely love that idea of, like, there's just something cool about it. Like, just like that fraternity of heroes out in space. And cool. I would love to see that show. But yeah. We're way off beam.
We're way off beam. That happens when you come on the show. It happened the last time.
I know. There are so many tangents.
But I mean, there's this movie though. There's not a whole lot to really dive into, because it's very much on the surface. It's what you see is what you get. I mean, it's and it's what are we gonna unless we go off tangent, we're just gonna be sitting here for an hour talking about, oh, wasn't this awesome? And yeah, it was.
I mean, yeah, it's easier to critique and talk about things that we didn't like. And with very, like, I have to say, this one played it lean and mean. It knew exactly what it was doing. It didn't overstay its welcome. It had its point to make that all four of these characters are amazing and they should be in more things and maybe more things together. And would it have been cool to see Bronze Tiger with that tiger head mask on? Absolutely. We can't have everything, but what we did get was really, really cool.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that we didn't get any sort of more tiger-esque motif with him. Like, I was expecting at least like a tiger striped shirt or something.
Yeah. I mean, they do kind of like lean into that one design, and they don't really like, because everybody else kind of has like, I mean, like Lady Shiva has her cool outfit. Richard Dragon has his like Bruce Lee kind of outfit there, and but they never really give like Batman has his thing, and like, but I guess they kind of emphasize that like Bruce is the outlier because he has this whole theatrical costume that he wears. Everybody else is just like, we got no problems with bar martial arts, but Bruce apparently he needs to get into his mode. He's like full method. He's like Olivier. He needs to be in his zone in his trailer meditating. And
well, Olivier actually wasn't that method. Like, do you ever the famous story about Dustin Hoffman and when they were working on Marathon Man? Is Dustin Hoffman? Dustin Hoffman came in like completely sleep deprived. And Olivier asked him why he was, and he told him, like, well, I'm getting into the character, I'm getting into the role. And then Olivier, and I think this is apocryphal, but Olivier apparently leans in and he says, "It's called acting, young man."
That's amazing. Yes, that is great. That is
Brian Cox. I heard Brian Cox on The Beat with Ari Melber recently, and he was talking about his co-star on Succession, how he gets really into the method stuff. And Brian Coxley's like, at the end of the day, it's really just pretending.
Yeah, exactly. It's just make believe. Yeah. But but I do like the idea that Bruce needs to be in the suit to really activate Batman. It kind of ties into his whole like how he has the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh from the Grant Morrison stuff in the back of his head is like this emergency backup personality. Like if he's ever so broken by anything, this ultimate Batman will take over and just make him like go completely hog wild. Like it's fun. It's one of those like little bits of like, it's very comic book, but I like it. Like
it works. It definitely works for that character. Like it's
and that's this version.
That's a recurring thing in a lot of different versions of Batman. Like Nolan's films did that very much. Like the whole thing that it's like his complete outlet of the rage and everything. Dark Knight Returns definitely leaned into that.
Yeah, like which is the disguise and which is the person.
Yeah.
They've always played into the idea that Bruce Wayne is the disguise, Batman is his real face, and it's fun to see them play around with that and kind of play footsie with like, is it though, or is it like a give and take? Yeah, very, very cool. Like again, this movie is it's just fun. I mean, I absolutely recommend, like, if you have a lazy Sunday and you just want to watch something fun and light and breezy that knows what it is and it's just here to entertain you. Like, just get yourself a big bowl of popcorn and have at it, because it's an entertainingly fun time at the movies.
Yeah. So. I mean, and DC, if you haven't yet, put this up on HBO Max, because
absolutely. Yeah. It should be on some streaming platform somewhere because it deserves a wider audience, because this is very clearly like a lot of care went into it. Like the animators in creating the fight choreography, like they very much did their homework, because all those fights, from the opening fight in France to the final battle, like they are painstakingly choreographed.
Yeah.
Like there's never anything where it looks like, oh, well, they're just recycling some file footage or something here or there, or just going through some previous stuff that they've done. No, each fight feels unique and it plays to the strengths of that particular character. Like that great sequence where Jade's like, well, why does Shiva get the sword? Like, why doesn't Rip get the sword? He's been here longer. And so O Sensei is like, all right, okay. Rip, would you like the sword? Sure. Okay, you fight Shiva. And Shiva, you can only fight with one finger.
I love that scene.
And like, that shit was crazy.
Yeah.
And then it's bookended where like Shiva's changed, and she like takes that dude's trachea out with her bare hand, and she like flicks the blood off her hand. You're like, oh, dip. Yeah, those fights.
Yeah,
were great.
I was wondering going into this because I'm like, Lady Shiva's one of the good guys. I wonder how much they're going to sanitize her, and they did not.
No,
They did not.
Like Shiva has a code, but if you cross her, she will end you.
Yeah.
Like that's been one of the things with like Shiva as a character, particularly when she shows up in the Batgirl comics,
Yes.
like the Cassandra Cain comics. Like Cassie's very, very good. She is the best physical fighter in Bruce's stable, but even she's got to work when Shiva shows up because Shiva's she's the Leonardo da Vinci of whooping ass. Like she just handles it. Like she's not bothered, and she sees through all the Bat family's attempts at theatricality and deception. Like she doesn't buy what they're selling, and she knows she's the baddest person in any room.
Such an underrated comic that Batgirl
I know.
one.
Yeah, such an underrated one. Cassie Cain got done dirty.
Yeah.
So hard, and it's gratifying.
As much as I, we talked about this back when we did Birds of Prey, but as fun as that movie was, that was one of the biggest disappointments for me is what they did to Cassie in that.
It is kind of a bummer.
It was just completely unnecessary.
Poor kid. All good.
Okay, we can get her taken away now. So. She's a little sleepy, I think. She's time for her morning nap.
Little cranky. No worries.
All right.
We've all been there.
Okay. Stacy, is there anything else we wanted to talk about with Soul of the Dragon? Because the only other thing I think, because we kind of touched on it, but I think the music is just perfect. It's
delightful.
Yeah. It's so like every time, like I'm someone who doesn't really pay a lot of attention to music in movies unless it's really, really good. And this music is really, really good.
This music's good. It makes you want to have a copy of the soundtrack. Like it's just so like it's of a piece. Like it's evocative of the mood of the era, and it's just really cool. And a lot of the visual stuff, like the animation team is clearly having a ball playing around with these tropes. Like when you get like the Axe Gang shows up and they break into Bruce's club, and they're very clearly like just wuxia kung fu ninjas, like cranked up to 11, and it's great. The Robert Atkin Dow's of Lieutenant, with the gloves, Schlangenfaust or whatever his name is. Schlagenfaust. That was great. And when they reveal his thing, I was like, oh, yes. Yes, this is my nonsense. I love it. Like they're clearly having a ball with this. And even some of the visual gags, like when they're chasing the Cobra cultists escaping with the sword, and they're in Bruce's car, which is so the 70s Batmobile, it's nuts. It should have had a bat printed on the front of the car, like that silhouette head from back in the day. But when they there's like, don't be a dummy, buckle up, and they smash through the billboard. like it's clear that these guys just know, like, we're just having fun here. This is all over the top. Or when Shiva looks at the big red button on the dash and she's like, is that what I think it is? And she just like hits the ejector seat. Like, this movie knows exactly what it's doing, and it's having so much fun doing it.
Yeah.
Like, this is the kind of thing, like, it's all too often that, you see these things and you're like, well, it's kind of disappointing. It's not really what you want. I like it, but I don't love it. This wall to wall just had me grinning from ear to ear.
Yeah.
And like, that's the biggest praise I can get it. Like, if you're in this kind of mindset, if you like these kind of movies, if you watched like Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, if you've enjoyed Enter the Dragon or, Game of Death, all that kind of stuff, if you like that era of cinema, if you like that visual language, you are going to have a fun time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny because we just talked about Shang-Chi recently, and going from that to this, it's a real treat. It's such a good callback to that era.
Yes. It's a fun callback / evolution from this era, and it's fun to see, like, it's fun to see both of them kind of come into their own in a way that's really, really fun. Like, Shang-Chi is very much the modern heir of all this stuff, and this was just a chance to be like, hey, you remember all these great tropes? Well, here's why they're great, and here's why they're fun. And we essentially made a little like greatest hits mixtape for you
Yeah.
of all these visual beats and references that you will have an amazing time with.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, there's not really much else to say about it. It's just,
I mean, really,
it's a really, because it's also kind of light on plot. Like, it's just a very standard plot, and the plot's just standard there to,
to showcase, to be a framework to showcase these characters
exactly,
and how they kick much ass.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, you could go after it for being, light on the plot, but it knows what it's doing. It's like, look, we understand that you've probably seen this story like 1,000 times before. We're doing a MacGuffin chase, everybody. We're doing a MacGuffin chase. But I did respect the fact that one of the characters starts off with the MacGuffin and then gets the MacGuffin stole out from under her. So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is because I think the filmmakers, they knew that, what, we know why you're here. You're here to watch You're here to watch a Kung Fu Batman movie. You're not here
to watch much ass being kicked.
Yeah. So we're going to give you a Kung Fu Batman movie, and they did.
Exactly. And does exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what you're in for. You're going to have a good time. You'll be going through every minute of this movie like a can of Pringles, and you're going to have fun with it. Like it's an unabashedly fun movie, and I really hope that it did well in terms of like Blu-ray and like DVD sales, because I really want to see them play more around with these kind of like era movies, because that would be fun. Like it would be fun to see them do another like 50s 60s riff, not necessarily like a kind of like New Frontier, but kind of like its own thing. Like it would be cool to see them do something like that, or something in the 80s, or just evoke those prime eras of like, because it would be cool to see them do like a Green Arrow movie set in like 80s action movie, like Star City, like just over the top, like Longbow Hunters, but not a bummer and not as horrible to Black Canary as Longbow Hunters is, which is like, like there's a rant waiting to happen, but evocative of that era.
I mean, I want to see full on. I want to see full on Class War Green Arrow in animation.
Yes, like him just being a full on outlaw who's just like fascist capitalist lackey A, and fascist capitalist lackey B, like just living his best Robin Hood.
Yeah, and I think that is like the best. That's the easiest way to. That's the best era to do it. And it's the 1980s.
It's the 80s when greed is good. Exactly. Have him fight some Gordo Gecko monster and his gang of thugs. Like, somebody posted online like the one fight we should have got from the Arrowverse, and it was Green Arrow played by Steve Amell and Tobias Whale.
Yeah,
like that would be an amazing fight. Like one of the 100, which were like the greed is good mega supervillain conspiracy of the 80s, versus Oliver Queen, the most loudmouthed, like kick the door in, take it to the capitalist fascist pigs. Oliver Queen, like, say what you will about Dark Knight Returns, and a great deal may certainly be said about old Frank before his tragic disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle in 1992. We never saw him again, and he never made a sequel to Dark Knight. Never. He nailed Oliver Queen, where it's like, hi-yo, goddamn silver. Like, just fucking, he does not give a fuck, and he hates the machine, and he will always be a rebel. And that's what I love about him. Like, he's a loudmouth lefty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, Stacy, thanks so much. It's always fun having you come on here. It's always fun to talk about these.
It's always a delight. I look forward to our next whatever this might be. So
I'll
have to marinate on the next one to do. So
absolutely, yeah.
Interesting.
But tell people where they can find you.
Oh, you can find me all over the place. If you want to find me on Twitter for my stream of consciousness thoughts, you can find me at Stacy HD, STACY, H is in Harold, D is in David. And you can find the Fanboy Power Hour at Fanboy Power Hour on Twitter. And we're also available if you do a quick search on Google for the Fanboy Power Hour. You'll find the latest episode. You can subscribe to our RSS feed, and just our RSS feed, I should say, and just have a good time with it. So yeah, those are the two easiest ways to get a hold of me. Yeah, and our Fanboy Power Hour Facebook page. Yeah.
Great. And this is Superhero Cinephiles. You can find us at the website, superherocinephiles.com. Make sure to rate and review and subscribe Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you get your podcasts. And that does it for now. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. You have been listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SuperCinemaPod. Join our Facebook group by searching for Superhero Cinephiles, where you can interact with us and other superhero fans. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a regular supporter at Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal, both of which can be found at our website, superherocinephiles.com. If you buy or rent any movies through the Amazon links at our site, it helps support the show. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.